The night smelled of disinfectant and dust. Eddie Moran unlocked the side door of St. Augustine Asylum and flicked on his flashlight. The beam cut through the dark corridor, glinting off broken tiles and faded signs. The place had been shut down for almost 10 years. Only a few wings still had power, enough to keep the security cameras running and the rats out. It was his first night on the job. He'd taken the position out of desperation. Divorce, debts, and a history that didn't look good on paper. Eddie just needed quiet work. Nothing ever happens here, the supervisor had told him. Just make your rounds, log the times, and keep the cameras rolling. But as he stepped inside, Eddie couldn't help but feel the air pressing against his chest, heavy with mildew and memory. The asylum felt awake. He checked his schedule on a clipboard. Wing A, 10 p.m. Ward C, 11:30 p.m. Basement generator 1 a.m. Easy enough, he muttered. His voice echoed strangely as if the hallway didn't end. 10:14 p.m. Wing. Eddie's flashlight jittered across peeling walls and empty patient rooms. Metal bed frames lay on their sides, wheels rusted, straps hanging loose like dead vines. A faint draft blew through the hallway, carrying whispers that didn't quite sound like wind. He froze. Hello? No answer. Then, a soft thud down the hall. He turned the beam toward the sound, heart ticking faster. A wheelchair sat at the corridor's end, turned toward the wall. He was certain it hadn't been there a second ago. He walked toward it, each footstep crunching glass under his boots. When he reached it, he saw faint scratches on the wall, tall, uneven gouges, as if someone had clawed at it. A single word had been carved there, S-T-A-Y. Eddie swallowed hard and muttered, "Probably kids sneaking in." He took out his radio. "Base, this is Moran. Found some vandalism in Wing A, over static." He tried again. "Base, you there?" The radio hissed, then crackled faintly with what sounded like breathing. He shut it off. 11:32 p.m., Ward C. The security office cameras showed nothing unusual, just empty halls, flickering lights, and shadows that didn't seem to sit still. Ward C had been the psychiatric isolation ward. Thick doors, observation windows. Silence so deep it pressed into your ears. As he entered, Eddie felt the temperature drop. His breath fogged in the beam of his flashlight. He passed the first room. Nothing. The second, empty bed, restraint straps dangling. The third, he stopped. A figure stood in the corner. He froze, the beam trembling. The figure was pale, head tilted, wearing what looked like an old patient gown. The eyes empty. "Hey," Eddie called out, voice cracking. "You're not supposed to be here." The figure didn't move. He stepped closer, flashlight flickering. "Sir or ma'am, I'm gonna have to..." The light cut out. Eddie smacked it. Once. Twice. It flicked back on. The room was empty, just him, and the echo of his own ragged breathing. He stumbled back, hitting the doorframe. Jesus. He wiped sweat from his forehead and forced a laugh. "You're jumpy, Moran." First night jitters. But when he looked back down the hall, all the isolation room doors that had been open were now shut tight. Every single one. 12:20 a.m. Security office. He needed a break. Eddie poured himself bad coffee from a thermos and sat in front of the monitors. He watched the empty corridors, trying to calm his breathing. Then, movement on camera 6, Ward C again. The same hallway he'd just left. A flicker of white moved past the lens. He rewound the feed. Frame by frame, there it was, a silhouette, barely visible, gliding rather than walking. He leaned closer, eyes narrowing. What the hell? Then, in the reflection of the monitor, he saw something behind him. just a blur of white moving past the doorway. Eddie spun around. Nothing. He exhaled shakily. "You're losing it, man." When he turned back to the monitors, every screen was static except one, camera 3. It showed himself sitting in the office, staring at the monitors. But the version of him on screen wasn't moving. It was smiling. 1 a.m., basement generator room. The power had begun to flicker. The fluorescent bulbs hummed like flies. Eddie descended the metal stairs into the basement, flashlight trembling in his hand. The air was thicker here, heavy with mold and iron. Pipes moaned overhead. Water dripped rhythmically like a pulse. He reached the generator room. The switchboard was humming, lights green and steady, but the door to the morgue, just across the hall, was slightly open. He didn't want to look. He really didn't. But the smell pulled him closer. Not rot, something colder, like ozone and rust. He pushed the door open. Rows of metal drawers lined the walls, tags still hanging from some handles. The room was silent except for the hum of the freezer units that shouldn't have had power. Then, one of the drawers rattled. A sharp metallic sound like knuckles scraping steel. Eddie stepped back. Nope. The drawer slid open an inch, then stopped. Inside, darkness. He leaned forward against his better judgment. His flashlight beam trembled over the inside of the drawer. Empty. He sighed, relief rushing through him, and then a hand shot out, gray and stiff, grabbing his wrist. He screamed, wrenching free, stumbling backward into a tray of instruments that clattered to the floor. When he looked again, the drawer was shut. Breathing hard, Eddie backed out of the room, not taking his eyes off the drawers. His flashlight beam jittered over the labels. Moran, Edward, DOA, 2015. He froze. He stared at the tag. It was old, yellowed, and cracked, but his name was there. Moran, Edward. His chest tightened. What the hell? He tore the tag off, staring at it in disbelief. His vision swam. Then the lights went out. 1:37 a.m. The voices. The backup lights kicked in, dim and red. Eddie stumbled down the hall, clutching the tag in his fist. The corridor seemed to twist around him, the walls bending, stretching. He heard footsteps echoing somewhere close. Too close. Who's there? Soft whispers answered, layered over each other like 100 voices murmuring underwater. He ran toward the stairwell, but the steps led down instead of up. Jesus Christ. He tried the radio again. Base, I need someone down here. A voice crackled through, faint and distant. Moran, you're late. What? Who is this? Back to your post. Static swallowed the rest. Eddie's hands shook. He turned a corner and found himself standing in front of the security office again. The door was open. Inside, the monitors were alive, showing camera feeds from every hall. On each screen, he saw himself walking, turning, calling out, but not where he actually was. Dozens of versions of him, all moving out of sync. Some were looking directly into the camera. One of them raised its hand and pressed it against the glass, whispering words Eddie couldn't hear. Then the power cut again. Complete. Blackness. 2:10 a.m. Memory. He opened his eyes to daylight. For a second, Eddie thought he'd blacked out and morning had come. The halls were bright and freshly painted, the floors clean. He could hear the sound of laughter, voices, distant footsteps. He turned in confusion. Patients in clean gowns moved past him, nurses pushing carts. Hey, hey, he shouted. But no one looked at him. He ran up the corridor, heart pounding. Everything was new. the asylum alive again. He caught his reflection in a window and froze. He looked younger. His uniform was the old St. Augustine one, the one from 10 years ago. A man in a doctor's coat walked past him, clipboard in hand. Eddie grabbed his arm. Doc, what's going on? The man looked at him with calm detachment. You're not supposed to be here, Mr. Moran. Eddie's voice broke. What are you talking about? The doctor's eyes softened with pity. You were one of our orderlies. The gas leak in the basement, remember? 2015. You didn't make it out. Eddie stumbled back, shaking his head. No, that's not true. But the walls were peeling again, the floors cracking, the people flickering like bad film. The asylum dissolved back into ruin around him. And there, standing in the middle of the hall, was the figure from Ward C. It smiled faintly. Welcome back. 2:45 a.m. The last round. He wandered the halls like a man in a dream. The flashlight in his hand was dead. The corridors stretched endlessly, bending into themselves. He heard the echo of boots. His own. He passed rooms he'd already checked, saw his own shadow moving on walls that weren't his. At one point, he found his clipboard lying on the floor. The last entry read, "Final round complete. Remain on duty." Eddie looked up, tears streaming down his face. "I want to go home." The hallway lights flickered. A soft voice whispered from behind him, close to his ear. "You're home." He turned, and the darkness swallowed him. 6 a.m., the new guard. The following morning, a man in a tan uniform unlocked the side door of St. Augustine Asylum. The sunlight cut through the dust, lighting up broken signs and forgotten halls. He checked his roster. Night guard, Moran, Edward. He frowned. Thought this post was vacant. He made his rounds, calm and steady. At the far end of Wing A, a door creaked open by itself. He peeked in, smiling nervously. "Hello? Anyone there?" The air was cold, but he heard nothing. Then, faintly, from somewhere deep in the building came the sound of boots echoing, measured, steady, looping endlessly. And a voice carried on the still air, barely more than a whisper. "Stay."